What's going on, YouTube? Thanks for coming and checking out another Fat Guy Builds. Today we're back with the 99 Subaru Legacy Outback, and we're doing a rack and pinion because this one's just leaking everywhere. It's disgusting. So I'm going to show you step by step how to do this. Save yourself some money. If you feel like this video is worth it, maybe think about hitting me up on Patreon for $1 a month, 12 bucks a year, and let's get into this video. First things first, pop the hood, give yourself some extra light funneling into the engine bay. Remove both front wheels. Make sure your steering wheel is straight inside the car and verify that your wheels are straight. And here is the steering rack that we need to get. Connects here. And there it is, hidden under all this nastiness from where this thing's been leaking forever. I'm going to do this the easier way so I won't have to struggle as much. And I'm going to remove the exhaust. I'm going to unbolt the front part of the sway bar here and here. And then the other half of the exhaust comes out here. Now obviously these gaskets are probably not going to seal again, so I'm going to have to pay money for the gaskets, but it's worth it because it will be less aggravating to actually do this job. Use a 14mm and remove the nuts that hold the header to each head. Use two 14mm wrenches here, or socket, or whatever you can get in here to remove this bolt here. You need two of them because if you don't, one side will spin when you try to take the other side off. I'm having an insanely hard time getting these bolts out, so I'm just going to hack it off and buy 2 new bolts and 2 new nuts. There's an O2 sensor here, so you're going to reach up and unplug that clip right there, and then the O2 sensor will just come out with the pipe. Use a 12mm and remove these bolts here. Looks like there's a nut on top you're gonna have to hold, so just keep that in mind. You're gonna need a wrench. I want this sway bar out of the way, so 12mm, take off this holder here, and then all you're going to do is let the sway bar dangle. You're not going to disconnect it from here. You're just going to pull it down and let it dangle. Go through the driver's side up in this way. You're going to have to remove this bolt. It's a 12mm. That's what connects the steering rack to your steering wheel. So I had to turn it a little bit in order to get the bolt to face me. So what we're going to do here is mark it with a Sharpie so we know what goes where, just to make sure when we put it together. We need to disconnect the tie rod end from the spindle. First things first, you have to get this cotter pin out. So grab some needle nose pliers and pry it so that the thing will come out. Use a 19mm to break this nut loose, and you're going to want to get it flush with the top here. Then what we're going to do is we're going to whack it with a hammer here. The reason you have this flush is if the hammer slips, you don't want to mess up the threads on your tie rod. But if you hit it here, then the tie rod should pop out of the steering spindle. Break this nut loose to help facilitate removing this when you have the steering rack on the floor. So you're going to want to spin it off a little bit, leave it in its position though. That way when you have these things side by side on the floor, you can swap the tie rods onto the new steering rack with a little hassle and headache trying to break these things loose while this is not connected to the car, because trust me, it's easier while everything's connected to break this loose. So do it on both sides. I didn't do this side yet. Do it on both sides. Use a 14mm Loosen these bolts, but do not take them all the way out. Leave a few threads in, because we want to get this thing pried off from the rubber gasket. It's just all stuck together right now. And then we also want the linkage to the steering wheel to also come apart. So we just want this to come down maybe half an inch or so. And then it'll make it easier to get to those lines with this thing dangling as well, to disconnect the high pressure and the return power steering lines. You're going to use 2 wrenches, a 14 and a 17. You're going to hold the 17 still, and you're going to lefty-loosey the 14. Once you have both lines disconnected, there should be nothing else holding this in. Over here, the steering linkage is coming apart, so we're good. So I'm going to take out the bolts the rest of the way and just drop this thing and put it on the floor. Now is a great time to clean up any oily, horrifically disgusting mess that there could be. Here's a part number from AutoZone, 8755, or it's 313-0140, and it's the Endurance brand. They were cheaper on Rock Auto, but at the same time I was like, well, if a seal fails and I got to use a warranty, what's less headache? And at the end of the day, AutoZone was less headache for parts like this. I do get a lot of parts from Rock Auto, but in this scenario, I just got the AutoZone one. So based on how this looks right now, they make you reuse the 2 feed lines that go into here and here. So I'm going to pull those off next. Looks like a 14 and a 17 mil. Pull those lines off, clean them up, transfer them to the new steering rack. There's an O-ring that comes behind the cap. That O-ring goes over here. There's O-rings that come in the packaging. They go on the thicker line on both sides. And then now we can feed this through the center here. And then we can actually tighten this guy down. It didn't come with the O-rings for the small line, so I'm going to take this line to AutoZone or O'Reilly's. Actually, Ace Hardware might have them too. And find O-rings that fit both of these. Since this system takes ATF, you want to take some ATF and rub it on the O-rings that go to these 2 lines. Rub them on both sides. That way the O-ring doesn't get damaged while you're tightening down the lines. Get your little rubber things and the holding brackets back on in their general areas. And now we're going to stick it in. Put a little man in the cabin to hold the wheel straight. And then... Oh no! No, the beer. And then make them hold the wheels straight so that when you put this thingy on here, it's straight on the steering rack. On the steering rack, go all the way left, put a mark, and then go all the way right, put a mark. Right here, there's the 2 marks, and it was 3 turns. Then from the center of these 2, since 1.5 will be opposite, I put a mark on this side and lined it up here at 1.5 turns, and it's centered now. So that means the steering rack has the equal length poking out both sides, roughly. Obviously, you know, it'll be close enough to then go get an alignment done. But if it's pushed off to one side, whatever, that's how you do it. You go all the way one way, mark it, all the way the other way, mark it, count how many turns it was from one end to the other, and then put it in the middle. While you're trying to line it up, you can't just stuff this in. You need to put it in while you're putting that on at the same time. So what you want to do, start these back ones like 2 threads. Start this one like 2 threads. That way you don't have to hold all the weight. Then you're going to push up while the guy up top is holding it straight. You're going to push it up and feed it in. Then While it's fed in, you come back here, you thread in this other one, and then you tighten these two down first, then tighten these two down, and that way it won't fall out of the linkage. Have a friend, same guy who held the steering wheel, stand over there, come over here, you thread on the tie rod end, then you put it in, you tell them, does it look straight? And then no, yes, no, spin it some more. So this is close enough now to go get the alignment. So I just sort of tighten the nut a little bit. They're gonna have to loosen all this up when they do the alignment, so I'm not gonna mess with it. Get these power steering lines cleaned up, put ATF on the O-rings, and then tighten the lines to the steering rack lines. After getting all your lines and everything tightened back down, now we're to the point where we're going to bleed the system. So the first thing you want to do is get an initial fill where it's all the way above the little white piece, and then you're going to start it, or you can just crank it actually, but let's just say you start it for 3 to 4 seconds, shut it off, do it again, and then once it doesn't suck it all out instantaneously, which it will at the beginning because all the lines are empty and the rack is empty, everything's empty, right? So just go ahead, probably do that about twice. Just fill it up, do it, fill it up, and then turn the car back on. Then what you can do is fill it while the car is running. Once you fill it while the car is running, then you, at the same time, once it looks like it's at the correct level, which should be about halfway up this little like screen, plastic screen thing in here. It's about halfway up that. Then once it's there, you have the person inside turn the wheel all the way left, all the way right, all the way left, all the way right, over and over and over until the fluid level does not go down anymore. And at that point, you're done.